Have you ever noticed how some people manage to keep their heads together even when everything around them is crumbling? While most people panic, scream, despair, or simply freeze in the face of fear, there exists a rare type of individual who takes a deep breath, observes the situation with surgical clarity, and acts with absolute precision. These people are not cold by nature. They have trained their minds to think coolly even when chaos knocks at the door. And if there is a perfect symbol of this ability, that symbol is Batman. We are not talking about superpowers. We are not talking about luck or emotional privilege. We are talking about Stoic philosophy applied in practice, about a man who transformed his greatest tragedy into fuel for a lifetime of mental control, unwavering discipline, and strategic action. Batman did not conquer fear. He learned to think coolly in the midst of it. And today you will discover exactly how to do the same in your life, using the Stoic principles that made the Dark Knight a legend, not only in comics, but also in the practical philosophy of emotional self-control. The truth is that most people live at the mercy of their own emotions. When something goes wrong, the automatic reaction is despair. When someone offends them, the immediate response is anger. When the future seems uncertain, anxiety takes over. These reactions are natural, yes, but they are also responsible for turning small problems into personal catastrophes. Stoicism teaches something revolutionary. You do not need to control the chaos around you, you need to control your reaction to the chaos. And that is exactly what Batman does in every mission, in every confrontation, in every night on the streets of Gotham. He faces psychotic villains, impossible situations, lethal traps, and still keeps his mind sharp as a blade. How? Because he understood the most important principle of Stoic philosophy, the dichotomy of control. Seneca, one of the greatest Stoic philosophers, said that we must always distinguish between what is within our control and what is not. Batman cannot control whether the Joker will attack again, but he can control how he prepares, how he reacts, and how he acts when that happens. This is the difference between being a victim of circumstances or being the master of one's own actions. When Bruce Wayne witnessed the murder of his parents that fateful night in Crime Alley, he had two choices: let the trauma destroy him or use it as a foundation to build something greater. Most people would have chosen the path of blind revenge, self-destruction, or eternal bitterness. But Bruce chose the path of Stoic philosophy, even without knowing he was doing so. He accepted that he could not change the past, but he could completely shape the future. Marcus Aurelius, Roman emperor and Stoic philosopher, wrote in his Meditations that the mind that adapts to circumstances is invincible. And that is exactly what Bruce did. He adapted his pain, transformed his fear into strength, and channeled all that negative energy into discipline, training, and purpose. While others remained trapped in pain, he trained his body and mind to think coolly, even when the pain screamed inside him. This is the essence of applied Stoicism, to recognize the emotion but not let it govern your decisions. Feeling fear is human. Acting dominated by fear is weakness. Feeling anger is natural. Being controlled by anger is destruction. Batman feels all of this, but he acts guided by reason, not by emotion. Thinking coolly in the midst of chaos does not mean being insensitive or robotic. It means having the ability to separate what you feel from what you need to do. It is this skill that allows Batman to face situations where any ordinary person would collapse. Imagine being surrounded by enemies with no apparent escape, with innocent lives at risk and the clock ticking against you. The natural reaction would be panic, paralysis, or suicidal impulsiveness. But Batman breathes, observes, calculates, and acts with precision. He has trained his mind to function better precisely in moments of greatest pressure. And this is not a gift, it is training. It is daily practice of mental control. The Stoics called this premeditatio malorum, the negative visualization. Before any mission, Bruce Wayne mentally goes through all possible scenarios, including the worst ones. He imagines traps, betrayals, equipment failures, everything. And by doing this, he removes the element of surprise from fear. When the worst happens, he is already mentally prepared for it. There is no shock, no despair, just execution of the alternative plan. This ancient Stoic technique is still used today by elite military personnel, surgeons, fighter pilots, and all those who need to think coolly under extreme pressure. Batman's mental coolness also comes from another fundamental Stoic principle: the focus on the present. Epictetus, a slave who became one of the greatest Stoic philosophers, taught that we suffer more in imagination than in reality. When you are in the midst of chaos, your greatest enemy is not the situation itself, but the thoughts about what might happen. The fear of the future paralyzes. The guilt of the past corrodes, but action in the present liberates. Batman does not waste time thinking about what he could have done differently or what might go wrong in 10 minutes. He is completely present in the now, focused on the next action, the next move, the next decision. This state of mindfulness in the present is what allows him to think coolly even when everything around him is on fire. His mind is not divided between past and future. It is wholly in the present moment where action is possible and necessary. Another crucial aspect of Batman's Stoic philosophy is emotional control through disciplined reason. The Stoics believed that destructive emotions arise from mistaken judgments about reality. When we interpret something as terrible beyond measure, we create an emotion proportional to that distorted judgment. Batman has trained his mind to question his own emotional judgments before acting. When he faces Scarecrow and his fear gas, he does not deny that he is feeling fear. He acknowledges the emotion, identifies its origin, and then rationally chooses how to respond. This practice is called cognitive distancing in modern psychology, but the Stoics taught this over 2,000 years ago. Marcus Aurelius wrote to himself, "When something disturbs your mind, remember that it is not the thing itself that disturbs you, but your judgment about it. Change the judgment, and the disturbance disappears." This is the key to thinking coolly: to recognize that between the external event and your reaction there is a space, and in that space lies your freedom of choice. Chaos does not force you to react in a certain way. You choose how to interpret the chaos and how to respond to it. Stoic philosophy also teaches that virtue lies in correct action, not in the outcome. Batman does not measure his worth by the fact that Gotham is completely free of crime, because that is beyond his total control. He measures his worth by the effort he puts in every night, by the discipline he maintains, by the justice he tirelessly seeks. This detachment from results is liberating because it removes the paralyzing anxiety of perfectionism. You do the best you can with what you have, where you are, and accept that some factors are beyond your reach. This acceptance is not passive resignation, it is active wisdom. It is the difference between breaking under pressure and adapting to it. Seneca said that the wise man accepts fate as an experienced fighter accepts a stronger opponent. He does not give up the fight but adjusts his strategy. Batman faces situations where he is at a clear numerical, physical, or tactical disadvantage, but his trained mind finds angles that others do not see because he is not blinded by despair or arrogance. He sees the situation as it really is, not as he would like it to be or as he fears it might be. Thinking coolly in the midst of chaos also requires something that few develop: the habit of constant preparation. Stoic discipline is not something you turn on and off as needed. It is a way of life. Batman does not train only when there is an imminent threat. He trains every day. He does not study criminology only when a new villain appears. He studies constantly. He does not prepare contingency plans only in emergencies. He always has multiple plans ready. This obsessive preparation is what allows mental coolness under pressure, because his mind has already traversed that path dozens of times before. The Stoics practiced daily mental exercises precisely to strengthen the mind as one strengthens a muscle. Marcus Aurelius would wake up every day and mentally prepare himself to encounter irritating people, unfair situations, and unexpected obstacles. Not because he was pessimistic, but because he was realistic. And when those things happened, he was not surprised, he was not destabilized. He simply activated the response he had already mentally rehearsed. This is the coolness. Under pressure, Not the absence of challenges, but the mental preparation to face them with rationality instead of emotional reactivity. Batman's relationship with fear is another powerful example of Stoic philosophy in action. He chose the bat as a symbol precisely because he feared bats in childhood. Instead of fleeing from fear, he plunged into it, studied it, understood it, and ultimately transformed it into a weapon. The Stoics taught that we must examine our fears closely, bring them to the light of reason, because most fears lose power when confronted directly. Seneca practiced periods of voluntary poverty to lose the fear of losing his wealth. He slept on the floor, ate simple food, and wore humble clothes, not out of masochism, but to train the mind to understand that even the worst scenario is bearable. Batman does something similar when he intentionally puts himself in extreme situations during training. He wants his mind to know through direct experience that it can function under any level of stress. When you remove the fear of the unknown, what remains is only calculated action. Thinking coolly means knowing your limits not theoretically, but experimentally, so that when real chaos arrives, you already know you can handle it. Another fundamental Stoic principle in Batman's mindset is the idea of memento mori, remembering that we are mortal. This awareness of death is not morbid, it is liberating. When you truly internalize that your life is finite, you stop wasting emotional energy on trivialities. Batman faces death every night, constantly aware that it could be his last mission. This proximity to mortality sharpens his focus and eliminates mental distractions. He cannot afford to think about past offenses, social worries, or ego vanities when he is one mistake away from death. The Stoics used meditation on death as a tool for mental clarity. Marcus Aurelius wrote that we could leave this life at any moment, so we must act according to our deepest values now, not later. This existential urgency creates laser focus. When you think coolly in the midst of chaos, part of that coolness comes from perspective. You know what really matters and what is just noise. Batman is not shaken by insults, media criticism, or questioning of his methodology because his internal compass is calibrated by something greater than others' opinions. His purpose to protect the innocent. The ability to think coolly also depends on something the Stoics valued deeply: radical self-knowledge. Know thyself was the motto inscribed at the Temple of Apollo in Delphi, and the Stoics took this very seriously. Batman spent years studying not only martial arts, forensic sciences, and criminology, but also his own psychology. He knows his emotional triggers, his weaknesses, his blind spots. And because he knows these vulnerabilities, he can compensate for them. When you do not know yourself, you are easily manipulated by your own emotions and by the tactics of others. But when you have clarity about how your mind works, you can observe your reactions as a scientist observes an experiment, with detachment and objectivity. This meta-awareness is what separates automatic reaction from conscious response. In the midst of chaos, while others are being swept away by their emotions, one who practices Stoic self-knowledge can take a mental step back and ask, what am I feeling? Why am I feeling this? And what is the most rational response regardless of what I feel? This mental pause of milliseconds is where the power of coolness under pressure resides. The Stoics also practiced what they called the view from above, a perspective-shifting technique. Marcus Aurelius often imagined himself observing the earth from very high up, seeing entire cities as tiny dots, realizing the relative insignificance of problems that seemed enormous at ground level. Batman uses something similar when he needs to think strategically. He does not get stuck in the immediate emotion of the situation. He mentally elevates himself and sees the bigger picture, the patterns, the connections, the long-term consequences. This ability to switch between microscopic focus and panoramic vision is essential for maintaining mental coolness. When you can see your current situation as just a moment in a much larger journey, intense emotions lose some of their power to hijack your rationality. You understand that this difficult moment will pass, that you have faced hard things before and survived, that the story does not end here. This temporal perspective is incredibly stabilizing amid chaos. Batman's Stoic philosophy also manifests in his relationship with justice and ethics. Even under extreme pressure, he maintains his unbreakable principles. He does not kill, does not use firearms, does not cross certain moral lines even when it would be easier or more efficient to do so. This ethical rigidity is not stubbornness. It is the practical application of the Stoic principle of living according to rational and virtuous nature. The Stoics believed that true freedom comes from living according to your values, not according to circumstances. When your actions are dictated by internal principles and not by external pressures, you maintain integrity and, with it, mental peace. Batman may be facing the Joker for the 10th time, with every reason in the world to break him permanently, but he chooses not to because his identity is not defined by the actions of villains, but by his own moral standards. This is pure Stoic power. The power to choose who you are regardless of what the world throws at you. Thinking coolly means not only calculating the best tactical action, but also the action you can live with in peace after executing it. One of the greatest challenges of thinking coolly in the midst of chaos is dealing with the unexpected. No plan survives intact contact with reality, and Batman knows this better than anyone. But the Stoics taught something liberating. Expect the unexpected. When you mentally accept that surprises are not anomalies but a natural part of any endeavor, they lose the power to destabilize you. Mental flexibility is as important as preparation. Batman always has plan B, C, D, and improvises when necessary because his mind is not rigid, it is fluid. This fluidity comes from accepting the impermanent and unpredictable nature of reality. Heraclitus, a philosopher who influenced Stoicism, said that the only constant is change. When you internalize this, you stop resisting the flow of reality and start to flow with it, adjusting dynamically. This is coolness in motion, not the rigidity of ice, but the adaptability of water that finds its way through any obstacle. The Stoic practice also includes the exercise of negative visualization, imagining the loss of things we value so we do not take them for granted. Batman has literally lived this with the death of his parents, and this trauma paradoxically freed him from many common fears. When you have already faced your greatest loss, other fears become relatively smaller. Seneca recommended that we periodically imagine losing our health, our wealth, our loved ones, not to be pessimistic, but to cultivate deep appreciation and remove the paralyzing fear of those losses. Batman operates with this constant awareness. He already knows what it is to lose everything, so he acts with the freedom of someone who has nothing left to lose. This existential freedom translates into operational coolness because there is no residual fear corroding his decision-making ability. He acts because it is right to act, not because he expects reward or fears punishment. In the end, thinking coolly in the midst of chaos is not about suppressing emotions or becoming an insensitive machine. It is about developing the ability to feel fully, recognizing those emotions clearly, and then consciously choosing how to respond instead of reacting automatically. Batman feels fear, anger, sadness, frustration, but acts guided by trained reason, not by uncontrolled emotional impulses. This is the essence of applied Stoic philosophy, using reason as a guide, accepting what cannot be controlled, focusing on what is within your power, living according to deep values, and maintaining perspective even when everything seems to be falling apart. You do not need to be a billionaire. You do not need high-tech equipment. You do not need superpowers. What you need is to train your mind daily using the same Stoic principles that transformed Bruce Wayne into the symbol of mental discipline and coolness under pressure that is Batman. Start today. Identify what is under your control. Mentally prepare for adversity. Practice distancing from reactive emotions and act according to your deepest values. This is Batman's Stoic philosophy, and it is available to anyone willing to train their mind with the same dedication he trained. Chaos is inevitable, but your response to chaos is always your choice. Choose to think coolly. Choose to act wisely. Choose to be the master of your own mind even when the world around you is on fire.